Welcome to BCN's new series, What's Happening Now, a collection of informational and hopefully entertaining programming where we substantively speak to interesting and important people. And again, we're here with Beaufort County Commissioner Hood Richardson, meeting in between our meeting after the meeting segments that we do after we have our county commissioner meetings, and Hood and I do a post-mortem of each meeting. But now we're meeting in between because the election is nigh, and it is so important that we talk about what we know, what's happening, what's going to happen, and what you should know. Hood, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Stan.
Hood, I have you here not only because you're my friend, not only because you're willing to come on a regular basis, but you are probably the most knowledgeable person I know in Beaufort County about politics and what's going on.
Thank you. That's a great compliment.
Well, it is, because we got some pretty smart people out there, and I defer to you. You are the man. But Hood, we have this election coming up. There's going to be no excuse voting starting within a matter of weeks. Already the absentee ballots have been sent out in Beaufort County and the rest of North Carolina. People are able to send in, and they get one signatory, and it has to be a full signature, whereas in the past they had to have two signatories as witnesses, but it could be a scratch. Now it's got to be your name, and it is punishable by felony should you try to cheat in North Carolina. So at least in North Carolina, we are not doing the universal mass mailing, which is being done in so many other states run by Democratic Socialists. So we're safe here in North Carolina in Beaufort County, but we want to talk about the election coming up. We got a national election that's probably the most important election we've ever had. We have a very slim margin in the Senate. We do not have the House, and I'm speaking of the Republicans right now. And it looks like Mr. Trump is behind in the polls.
Well, if you want to believe the polls, I hope he's running stronger than the polls tell us he is. You know, in the last election, they had him really down. They were trying to suppress his vote. Oh, don't bother to vote for this guy. He's a loser. And look what happened. He won. So I'm hoping they're trying to do the same thing with the polls this time. I think it's really important for every conservative and every Republican to vote. Don't listen to that stuff. Go to the polls and vote. You know, they want to make it a contested election and talking about having the police and the National Guard and Trump not leaving the White House and all that stuff. It would be a great thing if Trump won by such a majority that this thing is not even debatable. That's the best thing that can happen. That's why if you're conservative, you need to get out and vote and don't listen to this stuff. And if you vote absentee and you want to mail your vote, that's fine. There's not a bit of problem with people voting absentee, but take your vote to the Board of Elections. Make sure it gets there.
Yes. Speaking of no excuse voting, our Board of Elections will be open about 3 weeks before actual voting day. Hood, you know, in the past, we've both been there campaigning, you know, trying to get that last vote from somebody. And sometimes it works. But there's a very small line, almost always, if there is a line whatsoever. You can wear a mask. The people in there will have PPP out the wazoo. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get sick from them. And if you take the time to go, you wear a mask, there will be spatial distancing. It'll be much more safe than when you go to the grocery store. So if you want to vote in person, vote in person. I will tell you right now, I will be voting in person. And you will too.
Yes. There's nothing wrong with voting absentee if you feel like you're at risk. That's not a problem at all whatsoever. Actually, the President of the United States is voting absentee this time. He voted absentee in the last election. Just protect your vote. I think the big protection is get the ballot and take it to the Board of Elections. Don't put it in the mail because you don't know what's going to happen to it after it gets in the mail.
You really don't. Certainty is always the greatest advocate for getting things right. Hood, and on the national level, we were just talking about the polls. We've seen Mr. Trump move up slightly in the polls and more in certain areas. In fact, he's jumped. Now, there's certain thing as the polls that are taken by these news agencies. And then there's the internal polls. The Republicans with Mr. Trump feel that they are doing better in their internal polling. I think the Democrats from their internal polling, think Mr. Trump is doing better as well.
I think so.
Because hiding Joe Biden is getting out of the basement now. And he's out there talking about issues beyond COVID, which has been his number one issue, is that the president screwed up the whole pandemic, which, as we well know, came from China and is not anything we can at all control. And the things he may or may not have said in the early days and what he may or may not say now, because we all know Mr. Trump will say what he wants to say when he wants to say it, but he does different things. He's a man of action, and stuff is getting done now. We may even have a vaccine before the end of the year. Now, having said all of that, they are, and when I say they, I'm talking about Democratic Socialists, they're hung up on the semantics of what it means to be president. I mean, we see the virtue signaling of Joe Biden when he walks out in the field, when we walk 100 feet before he takes his mask off. I mean, like he's afraid that he's going to get sick from a bug or a squirrel that might run by. It's really hilarious. But this virtue signaling is going on amongst the Democratic Socialists. And they think that what you see on TV and what you hear the president say, or what they say he may have said, is all important.
Look, anybody that talks as much as President Trump does, if you take a long enough period of time, you can string together just about any meaning that you want. You need to take the president on face value of what he's done and what he's trying to do and get out of the semantics part of it. Same thing's true of anybody. If we take the Bible, we can string enough verses together in most cases to make the sin come out to be appear to be perfectly legitimate, whether it is or not. So look at what the president's done. Look at what his intent is. Look at what he's done for the country. Don't look at the detail and the mud that these people keep throwing on the wall, hoping they're going to get something that's going to stick.
Yes. Well, we've seen COVID Joe hiding in the basement. He's getting out now. Statistics are saying that he has taken 1/5 of the questions that Mr. Trump has taken in the same period of time. Now, I'll say those statistics are wrong, because those questions that he is getting are about 99% scripted. And he is using a teleprompter to answer questions. The question was given to him ahead of time. His prepared answer's already been made. He has to read the prepared answer, and everybody knows what's going on. Even the fake news journalists are even colluded within this process, which is sad, because that means they're not journalists. I misuse that word. They're not journalists. There's no journalists working at MSNBC or NBC for that matter. There's no journalists at CNN. Or they would have quit by now if they were real journalists. They would have left these fraudulent institutions. But again, and we talk about the polls. There's fake news. Could there be fake polls? Yeah. We found out in the last election there were fake polls. I will argue there are even greater fake polls now, because the news cycle is even more fake under Trump than it was before. I mean, think about the Russia hoax.
Yeah.
That went on for 3 years, and they discovered nothing. Everything that's being discovered is being discovered by the more conservative outlets and third-party outfits like Judicial Watch, who are using FOIA requests to get the actual information that the deep state has had, and discovering what really happened through this whole Russia hoax.
Well, take a look at what both of these guys are saying. You will find that Biden is not discussing issues. He's not giving an alternative on issues. He's putting the hammer down. I'm going to take all your guns. I'm going to do away with the oil drilling. You won't have any more oil. On and on. I'm going to raise your taxes. These are simple statements that he makes. Trump is on issues. He talks about issues. He puts a lot of other stuff out there, but in summary, he talks about building the wall. He did that. He actually did something. Biden has nothing of substance to tell you about other than these threats about what he's going to do to you if he gets elected president.
Well, the man has been in government for 47 years. Other than taking money from the Ukraine through his son and taking money from China through his son, what has he ever done? We don't know what he's ever done.
He's never sponsored a major bill. He's never been the leader of the sponsoring of a major bill. He's hung on to a lot of things.
Yeah. We've got a president that's been in government for 3 years, a non-politician, and he's done a lot. And I don't know if you've noticed, Hood, but in the last number of months, now that he's out of the shadow of Russia, he's doing some stuff more than he did before, which was exemplary. Now we have peace deals in the Middle East. That's never happened.
That's right.
In fact, if it was a democratic socialist president putting these peace deals together, it would be all the rage. It would be discussed in the news nightly. Instead, they talk about masks. No lie. The day of, I watched the press release, and one day after the shooting in Los Angeles, which is antithetical to what is happening with the riots, that could have been discussed. The peace deal with Bahrain and United Arab Emirates could be discussed. But no, they wanted to talk about mask wearing. And they went on the entire session discussing the wearing of masks and the virtue signaling that's probably not coming out of the presidency as much as it's coming out of the Biden campaign.
I think you're right, Stan.
Well, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. And we're back. I'm still here with Commissioner Hood Richardson. We're talking about the national election and the virtual signaling that we're seeing. And one of the unvirtuous things that we're seeing amongst the Democratic Socialist Party is their thrill with what's going on in the streets. The premise for it happening was probably beyond them. They endorsed it after it began. They created an environment where it could happen. Ergo, we only see the cities that are run by Democratic Socialists being torched right now and being destroyed. Because if they came in cities run by real politicians who cared about law and order, they would get a handle on it as quick as possible. We would do that, hopefully, here in Beaufort County.
Hope so.
But we see that things are crazy in America today. There's lawlessness. And we have heard through very good reporting that Kamala Harris, who is the vice presidential candidate, is providing succor and support for groups that are bailing out rioters and looters and arsonists. What do you know about that?
Well, just what I see on TV for the most part, but I see a lot of reports that there's some really big money has gone out to get these people out of jail, and some really big money has gone out to support Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and some of these other groups that are so violent. And the one of the things that's holding up the more COVID aid for people is the fact that the president will not agree to $1 trillion to bail out the mayors and the governors that are allowing this to go on. So thank goodness that Trump is holding that up, and the Democrats are just getting beat to death with the fact that they support violence and the fires and the what has happened to people's lives in these places like this, where looting and the destruction of businesses has gone on. We've got to put a stop to it. Thank God that Trump is not allowing those people to be subsidized, and that's what Nancy Pelosi wants. That's what's holding up the bill.
Speaker Pelosi feels like she would get a lot more votes for her party, her people, if she could get $1 trillion to rebuild the cities and counties in this nation. It would go to everybody. We'd get some too. But the problem is that's not what the federal government is supposed to do. The federal government is not there to bail out even well-heeled counties and cities. That's what we're supposed to do on our own. We're finding more and more people will govern poorly in local situations and then expect the federal government to come and bail them out because the federal government can print all the money in the world. Hood, we understand that Mr. Trump is running for office. And one of the most important things he can do as our standard bearer seeking that election is to put forth a list of Supreme Court justices. Joe Biden is supposed to do that, or he said he would do that. And he has not done that as of yet. He doesn't want people to know who he would support, who he would pick if he was elected president. Mr. Trump did it last time when he ran 4 years ago, and he's doing it again right now. And he's put forth some outstanding picks. I mean, I would hate to lose Tom Cotton. I would hate to lose Josh Hawley. These are senators, by the way. Josh Hawley is a senator from Missouri. Tom Cotton is a senator from Arkansas. And I certainly hate to lose Ted Cruz, senator from Texas. But they're all smart young men.
Well, you know, Biden has a serious problem if he puts out a list because his party is so fractionated. And that is, you've got the communists in the party, you got the liberals in the party, you've got the so-called normal Democrats, and there are not many of those anymore.
And they're voting for Trump, most of them.
Most of them, that's right. So if you put a list out of 20 people on there that you would appoint, right away, his factions are going to start picking at it. And he is going to lose votes if he puts that list out. That's why he hasn't put the list out, because there's no advantage to Biden in putting a list out. Trump has got one group, that's the conservatives that have voted for him, and he's proposing a group of conservative judges. We'd all know who that's going to be. The Republicans at this point in time are not broken into factions like the Democrats are. The Democrats are still a coalition of factions, and if he starts putting too many of one or the other, a lot of people are not going to support him.
We have Republicans that are gone from ever supporting Trump or Mike Pence. And they are what are known as elitist Republicans, deep state Republicans, Republicans who feel that America should lead by example, and that example should be endless wars. And Mr. Trump is against that.
Well, you know, you got ridiculous Romney, who's a great example of a Republican who should be supporting the cause. After all, he ran for president and lost against Obama, and that's hard to do, but he managed to do it because he wouldn't take a position on anything. And now he's dumb enough to come out this week and say that we shouldn't be going after Biden's son as a political cause, even though his son took bribes from half of the foreign countries in the world. He claims we're going after him politically. Well, guess what? Somebody told me yesterday. They said, who do you think was in there taking money just like Biden's son was?
Yeah,
Romney's children.
Romney's children's involved.
Yeah. So look at what's going on. There's a lot of corruption out there. Thank God for Donald Trump. We have an opportunity electing him to clean up a lot of government and get the bureaucrats away from making decisions for us. Just as you said, Stan, if the bureaucrats were still making decisions on the Middle East, we'd have the whole place still at war. Trump has bypassed the bureaucrats, and they've gotten mad at him before. Well, he won't take our advice. He shouldn't take their advice. It's wrong advice.
ISIS is destroyed. There's no real fighting going on in the Middle East right now. Iran, I hear, is on its last legs. They're in a bad way. And if Biden gets elected, the first thing he's going to do is reinstitute relations with Iran at a time when Iran is
He'll go back to
folding.
The original agreement where we gave them $150 billion to get into the agreement. Biden can't run from that. He'll go right back to that. We'll go right back to where we are now.
Well, you remember during COVID in the very early days when Mr. Trump was stopping the human carriers from China from entering our country, Mr. Biden said, hey, China is not the problem. Well, it looks like more and more we're finding out that COVID was created in a lab in Wuhan.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, was it intended to be spread across the world and especially into America?
If you look at the record, it was invented by a lab there. I think what happened was it got out of the lab was an accident, And once they realized that it was out of the lab, they sealed off the whole city of that whole city and wouldn't let anybody come in or go out because the Chinese knew what was going on, but they let their people continue to fly all over the world and spread it all over the world. I think it was just an opportunity for the Chinese. Once they realized that it had escaped from them, probably accidentally, they said, how are we going to take advantage of this? Typical liberal thinking of don't let any disaster go without some kind of a profit.
That is it. Never let a crisis go to waste.
That was the words I was looking for.
Yeah. I mean, they say it openly now.
Yeah.
Never let a crisis go to waste. Well, Russia, and really all our enemies, used the Russia hoax to devastate and divide us. And that's happened, and that's wrong. Now the Chinese are using COVID to devastate us and divide us. And that is wrong. And it's being let happen by the Democratic Socialists. Let's face it, they made it an issue. For 3 years, it was part of the resistance. Russia, Russia, Russia. It's the Russia hoax. Even got Mueller involved.
Yeah.
Who was a patriot.
Well,
now he's just a doddering old man and won't meet before the Senate.
Right.
Because he's afraid. Mueller is afraid. God bless him. And we just got some problems. And let's talk about what's going on in the Senate right now. Are we going to be able to hold the Senate?
I think we are.
I pray we will, because the Senate is the firewall, is the bulkhead against what could happen in the House if Trump were to lose. I don't think he will, but if he were to lose, if Nancy Pelosi keeps the House, the Senate is the firewall. And the first thing they would do is end the filibuster if the Democratic Socialists had the Senate. I mean, our nation would be going down a pretty dirty path. I don't know if we'd return from it. We may lose a republic at that point.
There are 6 contested Senate states nationally. North Carolina is one of those, with our dear friend, Mr. Tillis, who managed to vote the wrong way too many times and has gotten himself into trouble insofar as getting reelected to that office. So there are 5 other states, and I think we'll win. I think we'll split it 50-50. We'll get 3 of those. That'll leave us in the position that we're still in. I hope I'm surprised by us doing better than that.
Well, Mr. Tillis has proved one thing. If you're a Republican and you straddle the fence trying to bring everybody into your camp, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
You need to say what you're going to be that guy, and continue on as that guy, and you'll get reelected.
Well, Tillis allowed himself to be bought by the people that are for immigration, for uncontrolled immigration, open borders, and all that sort of stuff, because they make money on hiring people at substandard wages. That's what immigration is all about. It's not about this great thing of letting people come into the United States for a brave new world that they're coming to. It's about money, and it's about people making money off of these people. And as long as you remember that, you can keep it in perspective. Tillis took their side too many times, and he's gotten himself in trouble.
Well, if you let the elitists, the rich, control the Republican Party, it's going to be over. The Republican Party is going to have to be the party of the people. It will have to be a populist party. A lot of people don't want to hear me say that, because that means giving the people the right to be represented and control this republic. And that's the way it should be. It should be that way, not only for the Republicans, it should be that way for the Democratic Socialists. We'll have that argument. But when the people with the money are controlling things, because if you've got money, you can control a lot that goes on in a capitalist society. And I'm not casting aspersions against capitalism. It's still the best way, because it allows us all to have freedoms that we wouldn't have otherwise. But still, the elitists have to be held in check. When we come back, we're going to talk about what it means to be a political person here locally. Hood, North Carolina is run by Governor Cooper. He is personally responsible for all the reaction to COVID in North Carolina. It's been his response and his response alone. He has not used the General Assembly. He has not used the Council of State. He's done this unilaterally. Easy word for me to say. But what do you think, Hood?
Well, I think Cooper has seized power, and just like the sign on the front of my office says, liberty is in Governor Cooper's toilet, because he has not respected us. He has not respected the House, the Senate, the Council of State, or anybody else. He has seized power so he can keep us shut down to try to help to try to help Biden get elected so he can defeat Donald Trump. That's what this is all about. And just as soon as the November 3rd election is over with, all this COVID stuff's going to disappear.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that earlier, about how this is a plan, not only for the national and federal Democratic Socialist elected politicians, but it's breaking down all the way through the governorships, and it's breaking down that way through the local governments, the state and county and cities, where they're having all the rioting.
We need some definite law to shut the governor down from doing this. And what the boys in the House and the Senate are talking about doing is passing some legislation that says, governor shuts you down 15 days, the legislature is automatically called in session. Nobody has to call it in session. It's automatically called into session.
Well, if we remember correctly, back when he shut down North Carolina government, the legislature had just gone out of session, and they were scheduled to come back in session in about another 40 days. So he had 40 days, carte blanche, to do anything he wanted to do in responding to COVID. And that's when he pretty much shut down all of North Carolina without the collaboration of the Council of State.
Well, you know, the federal decided what was going on in Pennsylvania. A federal judge decided it was unconstitutional, and they've shut down the governor of Pennsylvania. We're hoping that will find its way to North Carolina. The federal judge will shut this guy down because he has seized power. He is a tyrant. And under any other form of government, he is a tyrant.
Yes. You cannot just shut down the United States Constitution when you shut down your government. It doesn't work that way. The United States Constitution is ours when we're at war or when we're gripped by a pandemic. And it's always been outstanding to me that, I'm going to cut this, Dave. It has always been astounding to me that certain governments will allow rioting in their city streets where thousands upon thousands of people are passing these germs, yet they will not let more than 50 people meet to worship God.
I think there's a lot of lawsuits yet to be heard on this, because I heard yesterday Attorney General Barr is threatening to sue the people in Washington State and these other places that have allowed so much property to be destroyed. He's thinking about suing the public officials that allowed that to happen, because we have strayed so far from the reality of what government should be and was intended to be. We're really in Never Never Land on a lot of things right now. And it's strange.
A lot of people will state that the 10th Amendment allows local governments to govern outside of the federal government, but that's not the way it really works. The federal government, the way our Constitution is set up, was to allow states and local governments to do as they wish, providing they work within the constraints
of the
Constitution, which we all swear allegiance to when we're elected.
Right.
Now, if the local governments will not protect the civil liberties of individuals and their constitutional rights, the federal government has no other recourse but to come in and take over.
You stated it very well.
Well, thank you. Even a blind squirrel find an acorn every now and then. Hood, we talked about the governor. We got an election coming up. Let's hit a few high points about who to vote for. And if you're a conservative, this is who to vote for. If you're not a conservative, you might want to turn away right now. But we've talked about the governor. Dan Forrest is running against the governor. Dan Forrest was lieutenant governor for, I believe, 8 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he was lieutenant governor under our previous Republican governor. And he's done a fine job. He's a smart guy. and I think he would make a fine governor. He's a little behind in the polls, but then again, are these real polls or fake polls? Who knows? We'll find out after Election Day. Mark Robinson, the first black to ever run for lieutenant governor under the Republican banner.
And a very conservative individual.
He beat a lot of white Republicans to get this nomination.
Because he is so conservative.
Yeah. Makes you wonder, is the Republican Party racist? I don't think so. I think the Republican Party looks for ideas. And they look for strength. And they want to be led by anyone who will protect our republic and protect our Constitution. So we were a big plus on Mark Robinson. We want you to go out and vote for him. If you're a Democrat and you want us to have a black lieutenant governor in this state, hey, this is the guy you vote for. I want him just because he's a fine American. North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein is a Democrat running against Jim O'Neill.
Yeah, we don't need to elect Stein.
No.
He's used his office just like the last 2 or 3 attorney generals have had as a stepping stone to be governor, and we don't need to elect a guy.
Who was our last attorney general under Pat McElroy?
Oh, gee. Oh, who was the guy that's in there now?
Cooper.
Yeah, Cooper.
And if you remember correctly, Cooper would decide what was constitutional and not constitutional when it came time to defend the law of North Carolina. We had HB 2 under Cooper. He would not defend it. He would not defend
the bathroom bill. He's responsible. Yeah.
He would not do that.
Cooper's been nothing but a sleaze. We don't need to vote for him for anything.
Well, he is a good democratic socialist, though.
That's right.
Okay, North Carolina Auditor, Anthony Wayne, Tony Street against Beth Wood. Beth Wood is actually a good Democrat.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but she does a good job. And wish Mr. Street all the help in the world, but Beth Wood has been apolitical.
Well, the good thing,
auditing.
The good thing about Street is you'll get a new look at what she didn't audit, so you may get some things audited and looked at that haven't been looked at. So that makes a change in office worthwhile.
Well, we got North Carolina Commission of Agriculture. You want to keep Republican Steve Troxler in office?
I'm neutral. Just keep right on going.
Mike Causey, North Carolina Commissioner of Insurance.
A true hero. It was Causey.
Man.
It was Causey that has exposed the bribery in the Republican Party and went way out on a limb. Causey definitely needs to go back.
Completely apolitical, nonpartisan, good man. We both know Mike Causey. We've known him for years. He ran and ran and ran for office until he finally won. He knows what he's doing. He's honest. And we need those kind of people in government. It should not be about party.
Well, Causey has been
about the man and who will do what's right.
Causey's been tested under fire, and he had the courage to do the right thing. That's why he should go back.
Well, he's running against former Democrat North Carolina Commissioner of Insurance, who was on the take from the same people.
That's exactly right.
Busted the Republican.
Right. That's exactly right.
But for some reason, he didn't get busted.
Well, he doesn't need to go back. He doesn't need to win. Causey's the man.
Causey is the man. He worked with the FBI, and they took down Robin Hayes.
Yeah.
Sadly. I mean, I'm sorry for Robin Hayes.
That's too bad.
Elitists should not run the Republican.
Robin Hayes was a very heavy-handed individual. When you were in the same room with Robin Hayes, you knew that you were in the room with the king, and he was in charge. Robin Hayes should have been taken down.
Well, both parties should understand one thing. The United States is a land where the rule of law should always dominate. We should not be a land of men. We should be a land of laws, and they should be enforced evenly. That's what our Constitution requires. Continuing down this list, Hood, we see that E.C. Sykes is running against Elaine Marshall. I've been getting his press releases.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like a decent fellow. She's never had anyone run against her.
Yes, she has.
She has.
Paglia ran against Elaine Marshall twice, I think.
Oh, really?
I don't know why he's not running this time. I thought he would be running this time, but he's not.
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, Secretary of State's in an important position.
Paglia made he was moving in on her, and I haven't followed Paglia enough to know why he's not running against her this time. But, yeah, we need to vote for this Republican.
This is why I defer to Hood. Hood's right. I was wrong. NC Superintendent of Public Instruction, Catherine Truitt. Do you know her?
No, I don't know anything about her.
All right. I read some things. She sounded like a Democrat.
Uh-oh.
I mean,
well, look, in that school thing, they're very liberal, and we're getting ready. As soon as this election's over with, we're going to be working on the school board about what they're teaching in schools.
Okay.
The war is just beginning for the school board.
Thank you. NC Treasurer.
Oh, yeah, Dale Folwell. Dale Folwell has done a fantastic job.
He is a hero, isn't he?
Yeah, and look, he found the $2 billion that the Highway Trust Fund, they took out of the trust fund and didn't tell him about, was unbudgeted, and he has a solution to that problem. He says, bring the money over here to me and let me run it, because I'm not turning it loose until the legislature tells me to turn it loose. These guys are just nothing but corruption in the highway department now. It wasn't that way in the past, but it is now, and we're in a lot of trouble because of it. You notice the white lines and the striping and the safety features aren't being put up on North Carolina roads now, and it's in really bad shape. But they don't have the money because they got to try to find $2 billion from somewhere. And Folwell is a fantastic guy. We really need to vote for him to go back in.
Well, if you remember back when he was first elected, you remember the health issues?
Oh yeah,
yeah. It was about. Would you explain that?
Well, what was going on under a contract that the state had with Blue Cross to administer the state employees' health system, of which Beaufort County is in that group. What was happening was the bill was coming to Blue Cross, and all Blue Cross was writing a check. There was no auditing. There was no oversight. There was no management. And Folwell uncovered all this and saved the states probably hundreds of millions of dollars before it's over with. Just the fact that he flagged that. This guy has
Biden was against it, weren't they?
Biden was against it because all they were doing was sending the bill to Blue Cross. Blue Cross was writing the check.
So let me see if I can remember correctly. What Dale Folwell was doing, he was inviting more people to bid on the state contract.
Well, when he got to the bottom of that, he said, you need to take this thing away from Blue Cross. You need to make this on a bid so we can audit it, so we've got some competition. Blue Cross is not competing with anybody in North Carolina on anything. They are a government, what is it called, whatever the word is, oligopoly or whatever it is. And Blue Cross needs...
nonprofit.
Yeah, right. Blue Cross needs competition. Folwell uncovered this thing that was costing all of us a lot of money.
Also, he was going to database all the expenses and what it costs for what procedure in different areas and try to get it more uniform. Now, databasing information is a good thing. Being able to collate that information and bring it back to your fingertips through search is something we've never been able to do in North Carolina.
Well, what happened, if you remember, Stan, is it became such a hot issue that it got in the House and the Senate, and it was the boys that are paid off in the House and the Senate that brought Folwell to a halt in making the progress that he was making. Now, hopefully we're going to get some more people in there, and Folwell, if he's reelected, he's going to be right back on your doorstep telling you what needs to be done. With Folwell, a tough guy like that, it's not over with, and he has done a fantastic job of looking after taxpayers' money.
If you remember correctly, some of our so-called Republican county commissioners were against Folwell.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
In support of Biden and the other nonprofits.
The rhinos,
those that take our money and take it in abundance, which cause our health insurance to go up higher and higher and higher every year. And if you're going to get the cost of the health industry down in a relative proportion to other things, you're going to have to manage it a little bit.
That's right.
It's not an open market. It's not a free market. The health industry has always been a monopoly. Always.
Well, the modern health industry, maybe in your lifetime, but Stan, I remember when you went to the doctor and you didn't have all of this stuff that we've got right now. We need to go back to that.
It is a monopoly now.
Yeah, it's a socialist system.
Health savings accounts would go a long way towards making it more of an open market.
Anything that brings competition.
Anything that brings competition. Now to the judges. This is very important. Governor Cooper has packed the Supreme Court with Democrats. We only have one Republican, and it happens to be Paul Newby, and he's a great leader. He should be Chief Justice, but of course.
Well, he's running for Chief Justice this time.
Well, hopefully Paul Newby will get it. Please support Paul Newby. I've met him. You've met him.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful guy, and he's a very smart man, very capable. We have Phil Berger Jr.
He's running for Court of Appeals, I believe.
Yes, he is.
Or Associate Justice.
Associate Justice in North Carolina Supreme Court. He will do a fantastic job. We have Tamara Barringer.
Yeah, I don't know anything about her. She's a Republican, but look, right now we've got the majority, like 90% of these people are Democrats. And this was because the legislature thought they knew something about politics, and they kept fiddling with the way the court was run and the way they were listed on the ballot. And a lot of people, when they voted for this very woman that's now the Chief Justice, they thought they were voting for a Republican. So you go back and blame the leadership in the House and the Senate for this. We're to the point now that what I would say to you is each one of these candidates is listed on the ballot as with a political party affiliation. Look at that political party affiliation and vote for them. And please understand that it is an alphabetical listing. It is not a party listing. So just because the first one in one category is a Republican doesn't mean the first one in the next one category is going to be a Republican. It's an alphabetical listing, so you actually have to read the ballot. And if you'll read the ballot, you'll know who to vote for.
You will. If you don't vote a straight ticket, a lot of people don't.
You can't vote a straight ticket in North Carolina anymore.
You can't.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the smart things that has been done. You cannot vote a straight ticket.
I think it's good. It forces people to know what's going on.
You got to actually read the ballot.
That's why we're having this little get-together day with Hood. We want you to know what's going on. The great irony in what you were just talking about, you really need to look at the Republican. People have generally in North Carolina, and this is why the Democrats stopped the Republican listing. People didn't know who the judges were, but they would vote for the Republican, even if they were Democrat, because they know that Democrat judges will preen for a higher appointment later on, maybe at the federal level. And the Republicans generally are apolitical. Mm-hmm. They decide issues of law, if we're going to be a nation of laws. They will decide issues more on law than the Democrats, who will preen for that higher appointment. Yeah. I mean, we look at the Mike Flynn case going on in Washington, D.C. to see where a judge is defying the Justice Department. And he actually works for the Justice Department, but he's defying them because he really wants Mike Flynn to go down. Now, he's a judge in a case where you do not have anybody prosecuting. So it's really screwy. And it's remarkable that that case is still staying alive. But the people who are hearing the Mike Flynn case are who? Democrat judges appointed by either Clinton or Obama.
You get a Republican majority, enough of a Republican majority in the House and the Senate, and what you'll find out is guys like this guy will be impeached. And the only reason he's not impeached right now is they don't have the votes to do it.
Yeah, Sullivan. Yeah. Judge Sullivan. He should be impeached.
Yep.
You do not defy your boss. You can only serve one master.
That's right.
Okay, North Carolina appeals. We have April C. Wood as a Republican. Seat 4. Seat 5 is Fred Gore. Seat 6 is Chris Dillon, who is a Republican. And Jeff Carpenter is running for Seat 7. Okay. And then for North Carolina appeals, Seat 13, the Republican is Jefferson G. Griffin. All right. That's about it for who's running for office right now. But on the state level, let's talk about the local level. Hood. This is something that's near and dear to your heart and near and dear to my heart. We have a commissioner race that's going on right now. The commissioners have long been run by the Republican Party. But they haven't been real Republicans. They've been what I like to call so-called Republicans, nominal Republicans. What do you call them there?
Well, I call them rhinos, but
Republican in name only.
Yeah. Well, like you say, the majority has been Republican now for, 15 years at least, but it's not really a Republican majority. There are two Democrats who for the last 15 years and certainly for the last 6 years actually run the Board of County Commissioners.
Yes.
And what happens is these weak rhino Republicans who can't get elected any other way run as Democrats. They run as Republicans. They get elected, and you got 2 votes with the Democrats. So they go make a deal with the Democrats, and they elect themselves to be chairman. This has happened. Gary Brin, the chairmanship started with Gary Brin. Evans got in the same way. Frankie Waters got in the same way. They go, and that's why do you think Jerry Langley is the vice chairman every time? One of the Democrats. He's the Democrat because he voted along with Booth, the other Democrat, for Rhino Republicans to be chairman of the board. Now, this year, Evans did not come out of the primary because it has become so obvious the corruption that's going on the Beaufort County Board of Commissioners. We have an opportunity this time. If we elect any one of the 3 conservatives that are running to have a conservative Board of County Commissioners, your taxes are going to go down. You're going to see a lot of things fixed in government, like the $2 million that the sheriff is wasting every year. And you'll see that go away. And those 3 Republicans that are running this time are Hood Richardson, Tandy Dunn, and Randy Walker. Vote for one of those 3. If you vote for Rebholz, he's going to get with Frankie Waters, the Rhino, and fake Frankie. He's going to get with fake Frankie, and they're going to cut a deal with the 2 Democrats. And you're going to wind up with fake Frankie as the chairman again. What happened the last time fake Frankie was chairman? Taxes went up. A lot of spending went out the window. We have no oversight on the county employees and what they're doing right now. Just like Washington, D.C. The big battle with Trump in Washington is whether or not the bureaucrats are going to make decisions. Well, these guys have already said it. They're going to let our bureaucrats make decisions. Our bureaucrats have been making decisions for the last 5 or 6 years, and look what it's got us. $10 million increase in taxes, increase in spending in every category you want to name. Commissioners need to take control of county government, just like Trump has taken control of federal government insofar as the big decisions. And that's why the federal government and the bureaucrats are all mad at him, because he is in control. That's why you have peace in the Middle East, because the bureaucrats are not running it. Trump is running it. We need that in Beaufort County. We have the same problem in Beaufort County with government that you have in Washington, D.C. That is a bunch of weak-kneed rhinos allowing the bureaucrats in our county government to make too many decisions, and the commissioners sitting there nodding, yeah, yeah. We need to change this. Hood Richardson, Tandy Dunn, Randy Walker. John Rebholz will lock arms with Frankie if he's elected, and you'll have the same thing you've got right now, which will be higher taxes.
In defense of what Hood has just mentioned, once John Rebholz took the place of Gary Brin, he had the opportunity at that point to vote for chairman during the transition of the new county commission. Each year, we have a new county commission. If we have a new chairman, we have a new vice chairman. Hood was just talking about that's when we decide who's going to be in charge, and there's a lot of deals cut. And that's how spending is sometimes negotiated further on down the road during the next year. John Rebholz had the opportunity at that time to vote for a conservative for chairman, and he elected not to. He decided to vote for a former Democrat who had run for county commission as a Democrat, who has voted as a Democrat. His name is Jerry Evans. He votes more with the Democrats than he does with Republicans. Actually, I say more. He votes with the Democrats about 90% of the time, if you watch. He is not a law and order guy. He is not a fiscal guy. I guarantee you, if the county commissioners could vote on the sanctity of life and denying abortions in Beaufort County, he would vote for a 3rd trimester abortion if he had the opportunity. This is the kind of people that we have running Beaufort County Commission. So we need a change up there. We're going to have Republicans running the county commission. They need to be real Republicans, not the ones that have been Democrats their whole life. They get in their 60s. They decide to change to the Republican Party because for some reason people will vote Republican for the commission because they think it makes a difference. And then they govern like Democrats. And it's just wrong.
Don't underestimate the power that the two Democrats sitting there with 5 Republicans have on the Board of County Commissioners. The 2 Democrats are running the Board of County Commissioners. That's why you need to vote for people that can't be influenced into selling their soul. Hood Richardson, Tandy Dunn, and Randy Walker. Soul is not for sale. Reb Holtz has already demonstrated that he's in with the Rhino pack.
Don't you think it's remarkable that these Republicans that act as democratic socialists, when they govern and when they vote, are still supported by the Beaufort County Republican Party? They're not only supported, they are supported over yourself and myself.
Well, the Beaufort County Republican Party needs to take a look at itself insofar as how liberal it is and it has become.
It is chasing away a lot of conservatives.
Yes.
And that's not us helping them do it. They do it quite well on their own.
That's why we have a Beaufort County conservative Republican PAC, which is different from the party. And the Republican Party raises their money and they support liberals. The conservative PAC raises our money and we support conservatives.
We support conservative ideals. We can support smaller government, more nimble government, less spending, and more effective government. Well, Hood, we've been together today. We've hashed out a lot of issues. Thanks for being here once again.
Thank you for allowing me to be your guest.
See you next time.